I mean, I just don't think there are a lot of options though in world football that do what he hypothetically can do. But the big difference again about contract leverages too, and going back to the NBA one more time,
Mm.
that the Denver Nuggets were kind of forced to make that deal for Michael Porter Jr.,
Yeah.
always knowing that he had a back injury, always knowing he had fallen in the draft because of a back injury. In the case
Yeah.
of Dembele, what Dembele could do if he's healthy, that idea. I mean, even though at 24 he's missed 688 days of football in 4.5 years, which is a lot. I mean, that's almost. I mean, that's yeah,
It's
that's
almost a tenth of his life.
that he's missed. That he's
Yes.
on the sideline,
Yeah.
been recovering, he's been recuperating, that he's
Yeah.
working out. I mean, so yeah, I mean, what he's capable of and what he is at 24, it is kind of that put up or shut up moment in his
Yeah.
career where he's going to have to bank on himself. And the other thing too, and I don't know how much I do believe these reports that he feels like a change of scene might be good for him. And I mean, it's not crazy to think that he
Mm.
had this whole career at Rennes I mean, sorry, Renee, and he had his whole career at Dortmund for 2, 3 years when he was becoming a professional from
Hmm.
to the French club and Dortmund. And he was like, okay, this is the player I'm going to be. I have this potential. And it's been 5 years now of not of basically being almost the same player and not getting to that next level as much as
Yeah.
he probably enjoyed being at Barcelona. But the one thing I also ask people to do is kind of ignore it's difficult to do, but ignore those reports because I saw one by a Catalan newspaper today. I mean, you can figure out which one of the two it might be about how Dembele was the last one to come to that team dinner,
Oh
and
God, last night's dinner.
came an hour after Pedri. And once I heard Pedri was the tip off
Yeah. Mm.
that was a Catalan paper Mad Lib, right? So
Yep.
like, which player is late to the dinner? Was it Umtiti or was it Dembele?
Oh yeah,
Right?
100%.
And then which player was there first? Was it Pedri or was it Gabi or was it right? And then
Yeah,
they name
maybe
a player.
Nico, someone like that. Yeah.
Like
Just
our
yeah.
quote best behavior is the one
Yeah.
that was an hour early, right? So Pedri is perfect. Pedri's always an hour early.
Oh yeah.
Is obviously an hour late. So
Yeah.
and that so Pedri was the tip off that it was an absolute mad lib of nonsense. So I always ask
Yeah.
people just try to ignore those stories. I mean, just think of this as a business negotiation. That is what you always have to do with these. And
Yeah.
even if and I understand from the Barca perspective, and Xavi has himself said it, that if a player wants to be here, I want him here. And if he doesn't want to be here, get lost. And that's kind of been a prideful Barcelona adage for a long time.
Yeah.
We want players that want to be here. And I totally understand that. And I think all clubs should operate in that manner that they want players who are going to actually be bought in and not create further problems down the line. Because I mean, that's what happens when you have players that are playing for themselves and not bought into what you're trying to build, then you're going to have an issue again in 2 years with his contract negotiations or an extension or
Yeah.
it is at the end of the day a business decision and think of it that way. Now, I think it's time to do the Ferran Torres part of this. And the reason why we talk about Ferran Torres is Matteo Alemani. Sorry, it was Fran Vatera, who the
Mhm.
CEO, who said that there is a bit of money to potentially spend in January and potentially in the summer. That
Mhm.
could be that gate revenue is done really well, even though at gate Barcelona have not exceeded the expectations they had. I think they were hoping when things
Yeah.
back up they'd get 60 or 70K, but having dealt with 30 to 50K on average now with these games,
Yeah.
I think gate revenue is again not crazy to what it could be, but there might be some money to spend. And
Mhm.
how likely do you think that there's a chance that it'll be Ferran Torres and Dembele, a Dembele renewal plus Ferran Torres, or do you think that Ferran Torres is just that inside lane bet that the club is making that Dembele is as good as gone?
I definitely think there's when I say non-zero, I mean, I think there's a decent chance that that is the wager that the club is making. That because going back to what you said about the rumors or the speculation that it might Dembele might be just in search of a change of scenery, and he doesn't want this situation anymore and things like that. I mean, that's entirely conceivable because as great a city as Barcelona is and as awesome a place as it is to live, especially with, like, if you have money and everything like that, his strictly speaking, his experience here can't have been overwhelmingly positive. Like, I mean, there's no way that his professional experience in Barcelona has measured up to his expectations or his hopes or his aspirations, anything. So it is entirely possible that he's going to hold out for some sort of ginormous offer, not really not really meet Barcelona on their own terms as far as negotiating wages. And yeah, maybe he's gone in the summer. And so you do have to make some sort of plan for that. You have to have a contingency for that. And at the same time, I think the only way you get Ferran Torres is if Dembele leaves, because I don't know that the financial state of the club has recovered to a point where you can give Dembele a salary with which he's content at the very least, if not thrilled, and also fork out some money for Ferran Torres and then pay him too. Because, so what is it? I mean, Barca have said, the numbers that I keep seeing is, Barca have said, I guess they can go up as high as, and I don't know how accurate these are, but Barca have said they can go as high as 40 million. I mean, they can maybe stretch it to 50. And I've heard at one point Man City wanted 80. Now they might be willing to, do business at 60. I mean, that's still a decent gap in terms of what Barca want to pay and what Man City want.
Well, especially in this market.
And because, I mean, even a 60 million euro, even a 60 million euro player in the before times was, that's a serious investment. Mm-hmm. And so to now conceivably do whatever you have to do and kind of bend over backwards to make this happen. I don't really know how conceivable that is. But I do think in order for it to happen, it probably necessitates Dembele's departure. So I think it's going to be one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, the financial part of the Ferran Torres stuff is the 21-year-old Spaniard, I think, is outside Barca's price range, as you said. But the good news is the 21 million euros that City paid him would keep the amortization on his contract until 2025 within reach. So they would, that being Barca, they'd be in a good spot there. But yeah, the number of the clubs to agree is apparently, 70 million in installments even. So it might be 30 up front plus even 40 million in add-ons that are easy to reach that come.
Right. Yeah. Like he plays half the games or something. Yeah. Something like
that. And listen, I understand the argument of Coutinho and Griezmann and having others off the wages, off the books, and that happened very quickly, right? That quick turnover of, okay, well, now this money's all freed up. And even if Dembele's money is gone too, but paying in installments does make me uncomfortable. But that's just me too. I mean, again, I'm not a $1 billion company, right? I'm the guy that neurotically pays off my credit card in full every month. I'm the one, I only feel comfortable buying a car if I can get 85% out of pocket. Or pay 85% of it out of pocket. I won't take an interest rate over 3%. So, we'll pay you back for a while doesn't sit well with me personally. That's just not how I like to financially operate. But again, I'm not a club that is able to take on 1.2 billion euros of debt and still manage to be able to function as a gigantic profit-making global brand, right? That's not me. I mean, people, the Barcelona podcast, thanks everyone for listening. We've got, with Xavi, it seems like we've got more listeners and people are more excited. But yeah, it's not those numbers, it's not those figures. But
right. I mean, I think that part actually bothers me less, especially since, if it is something structured like that, where you do 30, 40 million upfront and then whatever it is, like whether you do add-ons or incentives, or you just set up kind of a payment plan and over, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is, you pay it off. That doesn't bother me so much because conceivably if we're already talking now about, given where we were 6 months ago, if we're talking now about Barca returning to the market, even, speaking with a straight face about spending 40, 50 million on a player, there seems to be some sort of a rebound in the finances. And
for sure,
it's probably,
it's coming.
And it's not outlandish to assume that 2 to 3 years from now, as some of these contracts fall off and, some of the business, the business kind of rebounds and the world ideally, hopefully returns to, some semblance of normalcy. I'm guessing the financial rebound has got to be coming in the next couple of years. So so if we're paying an extra, 7 or 8 million a year for Ferran Torres, that you couldn't necessarily pony up at the time that you got him. That doesn't so much bother me. It's just the idea that, and honestly too, he's the kind of player that is sort of worth going to the mat for. I think he's, we talk so much about the financial aspects of so much of this stuff, but there is the point of the excitement for the player that would be joining the club. And I do think that he's the caliber of player and the style of player that's, there have to be some risks. There's the situation in which the club finds itself. You have to make some bets at some point, and this seems like a worthwhile wager to make. I mean, I think the downside is limited in terms of, like, he too. We were talking about the style of Arthur Cabral, but I mean, I think just the way that Ferran Torres, just the way that he plays, the quality that he has, and the way he kind of profiles out. He's not a player that's going to flame out. Like, he's not the kind of guy that you're going to spend 40, 50, 60 million on. And he's not going to join that cavalcade of midfielders from the last decade who sort of vanished or turned into pumpkins the second they arrived in Barcelona. Like, this guy's going to be good. And so, yeah, I mean, I think
I want to take it even one step further. I mean, you kind of beat me to the punch, but I really like Ferran Torres, and I really, really like the idea of the Valencia product in Xavi's system. I've been doing this long enough where I get to do my victory laps, because when we had Coutinho was being questioned and Griezmann was being questioned, I threw my hesitation out there. Even Memphis, we got it a little bit wrong, but all can't tell me that a front three of potentially Ferran Torres as a false nine, or Ansu there, and then Pedri on the left and Ferran Torres on the right is Memphis back on the bench, and is he a rotation piece? I don't know the answer to that, but what you know is that if Ferran Torres arrived and is fit and is healthy, he is on that right wing for a long time for FC Barcelona. I think he's a really great talent. I mean, that hat trick as a false nine with Spain lets you understand and believe. I mean, it was a showcase of the kind of movement that he can have with a dynamic midfield, the likes of Gavi or Pedri behind him. And it shows the kind of movement and fluidity that front three could have with the likes of Ferran Torres as well as Ansu Fati. And you also understand why Dani Olmo is still being, that name is being thrown out there. But if I have to choose between Olmo and Ferran Torres, I choose Ferran Torres if he's healthy. So, I mean, just the visual of Torres on Xavi's right wing is tantalizing, as you said, at worst. Unfortunately, a foot injury has limited him to 7 appearances this season, but he still has 3 goals in those 7 appearances. It should be noted, too, it's not a lack of appearances due to his injury. I mean, that's what's keeping him out. It's not a lack of trust from Guardiola, which is a big difference, where it's not that he's...
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah,
he's not one of these guys that Man City has... because this happens every couple of years when, the Man City, the accumulation of talent becomes such that one or two world-class players ultimately find themselves out in the cold. And if not even completely out in the cold, but just, kind of playing a little bit of a bit part. And even though, everything, they have the esteem and they're well compensated, whatever, it's beneath their talent. That's not what's happening here. He's not belly aching because Pep Guardiola has kind of buried him on the bench or forgotten about him. No, it's just, he's been nicked up a little bit. And that's, and I mean, I think he is, I mean, I agree with everything you just said about the idea of him on the right wing. I do think the most interesting question would be what happens to Memphis if Ferran Torres does arrive. Because
let me ask the question is everyone healthy? I guess
in that hypothetical,
Memphis,
yes.
I mean, not to say that, Braithwaite potentially back in January again, Pedri and Gavi, where's all that going to fit together? And then Ansu coming back as well. But we keep saying they're coming back. We keep saying that, but Memphis doesn't come off the field. So it feels like you don't need just one player like Dembele or Fati or Pedri coming back, but you need multiple players to come back to even have Memphis get subbed off the field. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? So I think it would affect in the near term. It wouldn't affect it. Now, if you bring Adeyemi in the summer, now you're asking questions of how do you fit Memphis, Torres, Ansu, and Adeyemi, with the assumption that Dembele is gone, right? And
Yes.
those are good problems to have down the road. But I mean, with the injury, not that Ferran Torres doesn't have a major injury history, but with the injury into the foot, which is a tough injury in the game of football, and then with Memphis, who, believe it or not, has usually had an injury bug, who's been completely healthy for Barca, fortunately, and Ansu, as we know, cannot really stay healthy right now. You hope that he can come back and just stay on the field for a long time, but
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we're going to have to call Ansu injury prone until further notice, until he plays almost a full season. So, yeah, I mean, Ferran Torres, it's not even that he'd be insurance, but to have 3 or 4 attackers that you do actually trust up top would put them in a good spot. And the other thing that I do worry about at this point, we're talking about this Ferran Torres stuff is, you know, as Kool-Aids, because Barca usually have the financial metal to talk themselves into players, I can find myself saying, hey, you know, how many have I got wrong, right? Eric Garcia and Sergio Dest, maybe I've got those wrong. Maybe I was a little biased on those. But, you know, generally, if there's a player I really, really like Frankie de Jong, I yelled about, Pedri I yelled about. There were players that I've yelled about before in the academy. You know, actually, the last part of our show, I'll preview it now. It's just going to be the YouTube video that I came out with about the new rising stars, about the names I think Xavi could call up. And, you know, generally I get those right too. So I have to say that, you know, I'm going to put my endorsement behind Ferran Torres, right? Like as if he was running for public office. But what I can't endorse is, how likely this is. We know that Matteo Alemany was in Manchester talking to an old friend in Ferran Soriano, as well as Stein. But the journalist that is pushed, and very rarely do I bring up the names of journalists, but it was Gerard Romero who pushed this the hardest. And what I will say about Romero is that he is about as reliable as a supermarket meat that says like still good on it. Like that's about how reliable Romero is, where you go to the supermarket and if your meat says still good, I don't know if you want to bring that home with you. You know, that said, Jared, I want to believe you and I want to take a chance on you, but I can't believe you. You know, he says that Torres had accepted a 5-year contract and a lower salary, which actually could be very true, that the player has already agreed to make the move and has agreed to the contract and the lower salary because he wants to come back to Spain. Apparently, he decided not to leave Valencia for quite some time, where he could have gone when he was 18 or 19, but he stuck around until he was I think, he just turned 19, or he had already turned 19. He was turning 20 when he went to Man City.
Something like that, yeah.
There could be a chance that he does want to return to Spain, and that's an honest thing that he wants to do, and he wants to return and play for Barcelona. And those things could all be true, and the player could also agree to the contract, but the clubs don't reach an agreement.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So I actually don't think Romero is going on, on too much of a limb to say that, hey, I think the player is going to want to come here and this is going to happen, but it's going to happen on the player's accord. It doesn't mean that Man City has to agree to a gosh darn thing.